ago. In a surprise choice, Cardinal Robert Prevost was selected to be the new leader of the Catholic Church. Thanks for sticking with our stream. I'm Lauren Winfrey. This is a story we monitored for you all week now. But now we're taking you inside the Cathedral of the Most Blessed Sacrament, where the Detroit Archdiocese is set to give remarks on the new Pope. Let's listen in.
Right there in the aisle of the plane, because I am just so pleased. This is so exciting for us. I never in my lifetime thought that there would be an American Pope. And for a long time, the concern was geopolitics, of course, that certain countries, nations would fear that the United States has sort of taken over now the papacy and the Catholic Church. However, when you look at our new Pope Leo XIV, you get the very clear impression that this is a man of incredible variety of talents and gifts and blessings. And I think among those are that important social justice message of universal brotherhood. I think he is a man who will continue the wonderful legacy we've had with recent popes of standing always with the poor, always with those who are downcast, always those who are suffering, and reminding us that we have a universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And for that reason, I think he will be able to speak words of prophetic truth to power, not just in Europe or in Asia or in Africa, but also in North America. And so I do not think there will be a problem with an American Pope. I think he will prove to be an incredible blessing. With that, I can take some questions.
We call it grilling, Archbishop.
Okay.
Daniel Malloy, Detroit Catholic. Our new Pope, born in Chicago, but spent a lot of his ministry as a missionary in Peru, in South America. How do you think that would, play a part in how he sees his new role, his new ministry as pontiff?
I don't know if you're aware, but the fact is I had some limited dealings with him, not in person, but because one of his priests was sent to the Tucson diocese where I was bishop. So I had one of his priests there, and my predecessor, Bishop Kakanis, who's temporarily running my former diocese in Tucson. He's met with him in person a number of times. And so he went to help take care of, first of all, I believe it was seminary, and did seminary work in Peru. And then he was back as head of the Augustinian order for a while in the Vatican. Then he went back, and the Holy Father made him the first bishop of that diocese of Chiclayo. And I think that gave him not only the time being a bishop, but also the time that he ran their seminary. And he was also, I think, one of the vice presidents of the Peruvian Bishops' Conference. So I think that gave him a rich, rich understanding of what it means to be a missionary, and also a rich understanding of a culture other than North American.
Elaine Rojas Castillo with CBS Detroit. This was arguably one of the quickest conclaves in recent memory.
I think it was about average, actually.
Oh, well, it felt fast.
Okay, it might have felt fast to us, but actually the second day, I actually said to a number of people, not that I'm patting myself on the back, but I said, I think it's going to be Thursday afternoon. Yeah, I kind of think the Cardinals had, with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, I think they had a clearer understanding going in than what they were sometimes given credit for.
Well, that's actually a perfect way to segue into my question. A lot of people were concerned really about what the choosing of the next pontiff would mean in terms of the direction that the church wants to go to, and considering that Pope Leo is a moderate, is what most people are saying.
A theological moderate.
What do you think this means for the future of the church?
I think people tend to want to put things in the perspective of predecessors. And I understand that. It's especially our Western way of thinking. But the truth is, someone, I don't remember who it was, you could probably Google it, but somebody said not long ago, we don't want a pope in the image of Francis. We want another pope who, like Francis, was in the image of Christ. And so I think what we're going to find with Pope Leo is he's very much going to be in the image of Christ. Theologically, he seems to be a moderate, and I must admit, I love moderates. I find working out of the heart of the church and avoiding these two extremes that sometimes suck all the air out of the room. Moderates, deeply dug into the church theologically. I like that. I find they're sensible, they're thoughtful, they stand in the footsteps of tradition. But what did he talk about today from that loggia? What he talked about was the poor, the suffering, standing with those in need, immigrants, migrants, all that. I think socially you're going to find he's a man again who reminds us we are not simply members of a nation or a state or a region. Ours is a universal brotherhood, and there is no one that can be excluded.
Will Jones from Channel 4. How do you think this will impact the growth of the Catholic Church within America?
Well, I thought you were just going to start with how it will impact the growth of the Catholic Church. I don't really know. That's the short answer. My hunch is I'm already seeing some wonderful things, anecdotally, but also the numbers. We found in our churches here in Detroit at Easter, when we bring in new members, most all of our parishes were up. I truly believe, what I've been reading on a number of sources, Washington Post and others, I truly believe that the Western world's experiment with radical secularism has proven a catastrophe. We have become more and more a people without values, which affects morals, how we look at each other, how we're willing to treat each other. And I really believe that people, especially teenagers and those in their 20s, are taking a hard look at the world that they're living in, and they're asking questions and they're wanting something more. And I think when they find someone of balanced, thoughtful, religious tradition, which I believe this man really espouses, and then when you add on top of that his very profound social justice concerns that are very consistent with his immediate predecessors, I think that's going to be one more step in our favor. I would also say that if we were to broaden our horizon and go outside the United States, and there's nothing wrong with having a view. I'm an American myself. I like the American perspective for Americans. But if you look at the global church, that has responded magnificently to recent popes. And so you see the faith exploding in places like Africa and Asia.
Do you think there's something the faithful can glean from his selection of Leo as his papal name?
Well, that almost sounds like a setup question. Yes, the short answer is yes. Popes usually take a name of someone that kind of telegraphs what they're going to be about. Pope Francis obviously chose Francis. He was the first, because St. Francis of Assisi was known as, he had mystic visions, revelations from God to rebuild the church, and in his lifetime, spiritually, he did rebuild the church. He also was very attuned to nature, and Francis' deep concern, Laudato Si, his deep concern for what we're doing to the gift of creation, the garden we should be nurturing and not abusing, all of that swelled up into him taking the name Francis. Now, Leo, if you go back to the most immediate Leo, that's Leo XIII, whose famous theological work was Rerum Novarum, New Things. And it was all about social justice. It was about brotherhood and unity. It was about the rights of workers and their dignity. He also was a man who released profound teachings on the rosary. And even, I believe, if you look, I think he released 2 new Marian scapulars during his lifetime for the faithful. So this is a man, Leo XIII, who really encapsulated the church's understanding of what we would call social justice. Not just charity, which is the rich giving the poor, or those who have giving to those who have not, but helping people to understand they have rights. They have rights as humans. They have an essential dignity that cannot be compromised. And I think all of that rich understanding is behind our new Pope Leo's taking of that name. Yes?
Looking ahead, obviously, you touched on it a little earlier, this idea of he's not just going to be a pope of the Americas, but he speaks multiple languages.
Right.
You heard it in his address. How do you think that will allow the church to really unify as we go forward?
The fact that he did not speak in English, I thought was profound, and I was kind of glad he didn't. He spoke in Italian because he's the Bishop of Rome, and he spoke in Latin, the language of the church, and he spoke in Spanish, which is probably spoken by more Catholics than English. And when you put all that together, I think he's revealing from the very beginning, he really is a universal pastor. Just as Pope Francis never went back to Argentina. He never visited there again. He was very much a universal pastor. And I think we're going to see the same thing from Pope Leo XIV.
As a newly started Archbishop, you, on, I believe it's the Feast of St. Peter and Paul, you will be going to Rome.
Right.
To receive the pallium as an
Yeah.
Archbishop, a Metropolitan. I guess it's, you're named by Pope Francis, but we're receiving it from Pope Leo. Just your perspective
Yeah.
on that. You will get to see, I guess, the first class of Archbishops to receive that.
I'll be a part of that. There'll be 8 of us from the United States, which is kind of a huge bumper crop. So when a man is named an archbishop over a region, he is presented by the Pope with what's called a pallium. It's a thin band of white fabric woven from lamb's wool, and it represents the lamb that is laid on the shoulders of the shepherd. So it's traditionally, through the centuries, it was usually brought to him, and then it would be imposed upon him in the middle of a mass in his cathedral. And whereas John Paul II and Benedict would impose it on the new archbishops once a year on the Feast of Peter and Paul, Francis went back to the more ancient custom of it being imposed in your diocese at your cathedral on you by the Pope's ambassador. So I'm currently negotiating with the Vatican's office in Washington, D.C. on when that can happen here. But it will be a great joy for me to receive that from the hands of the Pope. There was a jealous part of me that was a little disappointed in the death of Pope Francis, even though I rejoiced for the glory that I believe is his, the eternal life, the joy. Nevertheless, I'd been hoping to receive it from his hands. And yet now I realize we must recognize that there are blessings with every twist and turn of life. And it will be a great blessing to have been sent here by Francis and to have the pallium given to me by Leo.
Can you talk briefly about Saturday's Mass?
We will celebrate a Mass of Thanksgiving that's customary in the Catholic Church at 5 o'clock, I believe, here at our cathedral. And in that Mass, we will simply give thanks to God for the gift of a new Bishop of Rome, a new universal shepherd.
From a personal standpoint, have you been talking to any of your fellow bishops or archbishops?
I have not
Even
had
on the
time.
plane? I know, even on the plane where people around you.
Oh, on the plane, everybody was excited, and because I was dressed like this, they were all asking me questions, and so it was actually a lot of fun. Even walking through the airport, people were saying, "Oh, we've got a new pope, and it's an American." And
You're a rock star.
well, kind of. My nieces and nephews would laugh even harder at that than you are. So, Uncle Ed, the rock star. No, but there's a lot of joy out there, and for good reason. You know, he did his theological training at CTU, Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, which means we have an American-trained pope. I should say an American-educated pope. He did his advanced degrees there at CTU. So that's a certain amount of pride we Americans can take in this. And I believe, I have been told, but I did not read it from an official source, so I sure hope I'm not spreading disinformation and you all can check it, that's your job. But I believe he may have gone to seminary, high school seminary, here in Michigan. Holland, Michigan. It's not there anymore. That small high school seminary has shut down, but I believe he did some studies here in Michigan, so that gives him a tie to us as well.
He's ours. We'll
So
take
is he-
ownership of him.
So is he considered a Midwestern pope then?
Well, now I think you're pushing. He was born in Chicago. That much I would say. And I would imagine that that city is rejoicing today. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions, or would you like to add anything, Your Excellency?
I don't dance, but if I look sweaty, it's because I've been dancing ever since I got the news. So I am just overjoyed. I'm happy for the world, and I'm happy for the people of the Archdiocese of Detroit. Good?
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I appreciate your interest.
I know some of you are going to be doing live shots for your 4, 5, and 6. Father Mario and Father Tim and Father JJ.
That was Archbishop Edward J. Weisenberger. For now, we'll send it back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Because I know, Lindsay, you've been studying this and talking to so many people as well, and the thought has always been that cardinals would not choose an American. Why? Because, quite frankly, the future of the Catholic Church is not considered to be in America. It's considered in other parts of the world where Catholicism is growing, like in Africa and in Asia. And in fact, the number of Catholics in America is dwindling. Just 6% of the world.